So we've covered all the doublespeak that politicians and pundits go into, and specifically, I made a video last year about how people use the passive voice, and you know what the passive voice is.
Yeah, it's like the difference between the recording went wrong and Shane messed up the recording.
I'm blaming Windows on this one. I did it exactly the same way I've been doing it every week for 3 years, but who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, the passive voice is where you kind of sneak the subject off into a corner somewhere and hope no one notices.
Yeah.
And in this video I had done, there had been a meme going around which read, "When you think owning a gun is more of a right than being cared for when you are sick, you really need to re-examine your priorities."
Being cared for by whom?
Exactly! That's the passive voice. It's a nice literary tool for prose writers, but when it happens in a public statement or political discussion, it's usually an indication that something hinky's going on. So the problem is it conceals the real subject of the sentence, and for some reason, they don't want you to know what it is. In this case, they're covering up the fact that you'll have to be cared for by others who would then be forced to provide you with the service. But it can also go the other way. Politicians use it all the time to conceal their own culpability. Case in point, Rodney Balco looked at a lot of reports about police shootings and found that passive voice was being used all over the place to shift the blame from the police officers. He first gave a fictitious example to explain his point. Proper reporting in the active voice would have read, "Mayberry Deputy Barney Fife shot and killed a burglary suspect last night." What we read instead is...
I actually just got the reference he made there.
Barney Fife?
Andy Griffith?
Yeah, I made that reference a few weeks ago to a couple of the other co-hosts, and they didn't know who I was talking about.
I sleep to TV land, so...
Oh, that is a classic. How can people not know Barney Fife?
And the theme song is just so catchy.
Yeah, it's a nice earworm. It's a great way to get rid of other earworms. That's how good an earworm it is. If you ever got that song stuck in your head and it's a song you really don't like and you need to get it out of your head, get the Andy Griffith song in your head and that earworm will be gone. Okay, so anyway, what we read instead is, last night, a burglary suspect was shot and killed in an officer-involved shooting. Notice, no mention of the deputy at all.
And we're going to be seeing that term a lot, so...
We'll look at it. So... here's some real-world examples he gives. First is the LAPD describing a shooting where an officer is not involved. Quote, "On February 10, 2014, around 6:10 p.m., the victim was in the parking lot in the 13640 block of Burbank Boulevard to the rear when he was confronted by the suspect. The suspect produced a semi-automatic handgun and fired numerous times, striking the victim in the torso." Well, that's pretty clear, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty clear as to who did what happened. Mm-hmm. Also, notice how they specified semi-automatic.
Yeah, I mean, they're really going into detail there. Now, here's the LAPD describing a shooting by LAPD officers. Quote, "The officers attempted to take the subject into custody by using a taser, but it was ineffective. The suspect then ran towards the officers, still armed with the sword, and an officer-involved shooting occurred." Yep, officer-involved shooting. Here's another one. Quote, "When the suspect continued to advance on the officer while refusing to comply with his repeated commands, an
officer-involved shooting
occurred." And they even have a little abbreviation for it, OIS. Like it's something official or something. Here's another one. Quote, "While still in a position of cover, the officers encountered a male suspect who was armed with a weapon, at which time an officer-involved shooting occurred." Yeah. And I love how the phrasing makes it sound like the shooting is no one's fault. You know, the officers are just standing around going, "Wow, did you see that? That was an officer-involved shooting. My, how did that happen?"
I wonder if there's any significance to their repeated use of occurred as well. It's just, I noticed a pattern there. And
well, that's a nice little passive voice type thing too. If something occurred, it just makes it sound like it happened on its own, as opposed to someone actually doing it. So here's another example. After yet another botched DEA drug raid, they raided the wrong house. They pulled an innocent 13-year-old girl from her bed at gunpoint. The girl vomited, had an asthma attack, and passed out. Well, according to the family, the agents threatened to kill her dogs if she couldn't stop them barking. Here's what the DEA said in a press release by way of apology. Quote, "We sincerely regret that while attempting to execute an arrest warrant for a member of this drug trafficking organization, the innocent McKay family was inadvertently affected by this enforcement operation."
Wait, who was attempting to execute the arrest warrant? The McKay family or the officers?
While attempting to execute an arrest warrant for a member of this drug trafficking organization, the innocent McKay family, it does sound like the McKay family was once trying to execute the warrant. That's how sloppily they worded this to try and make the police not be the subject of the sentence. And what about inadvertently affected? If George Orwell could speak, he'd be screaming out, "I warned you!" There was another case in Georgia where a deputy shot a 10-year-old boy in the leg. According to the TV reporters covering the shooting, quote, "Sheriff Wooten said a deputy, who was not named, was approaching the property when a dog ran up to him. The deputy's gun fired one shot, missing the dog and hitting the child. It was not clear if the gun was accidentally fired by the deputy."
You know, if only they had something like, a safety that would prevent that sort of thing from happening.
Yeah. But listen to the way it's worded. The deputy's gun fired one shot. Like the deputy's gun just jumped out of its holster and began firing all on its own.
Well, I guess gun control people are right. Guns do kill people.
But I mean, this is something that has a huge effect on the public and potential jurors in cases. They hear the suspect did this or that. And what happens is unconsciously you visualize the suspect actually taking the action. When it's the police officer, it's always passive voice. So you don't have that visualization. You don't actually picture in your head the police officers doing it. And that's just one way they psychologically manipulate people.
It's amazing how many things we just don't think about, just don't notice. The way people speak, why we do things, why we say things a certain way.
And this is something that's really important to recognize when it crops up, so watch out for that passive voice.